In the dim corridors of the British Museum, beyond the glass cases and guided tours, there are rooms the public never sees, rooms where the air feels older, heavier, as if it remembers things we've long forgotten. Inside, wrapped in dust and secrecy, lies a collection that curators rarely mention aloud. Not because it's cursed, but because it defies explanation. Each artifact whispers of a civilization that shouldn't exist, a people who built what they shouldn't have been able to build, who knew what no one should have known. The story begins in 1992, high in the Caucasus Mountains, where a shepherd stumbled upon a single golden disk, half buried in the earth. Its surface shimmered with an otherworldly precision, delicate lines forming constellations, constellations invisible to the naked eye. Astronomers would later confirm what should have been impossible. The stars carved into that disk match celestial formations discovered only through modern telescopes. Yet this artifact was over 5,000 years old. How could they have known? When researchers brought the disk to London, they found it wasn't alone. In locked drawers and sealed crates, there were tools forged from alloys no known ancient culture could have produced, tablets marked with symbols that predated Sumerian cuneiform, fragments of glass lenses ground with mathematical perfection. And there, in the silence of the archives, a question began to haunt those who saw them. Were these remnants of an advanced civilization erased from history, or evidence of a chapter humanity chose to forget? Most archaeologists turned away. The implications were too disruptive. To acknowledge such sophistication would unravel everything we believe about the dawn of civilization. Better to label them anomalies, to let them gather dust in the dark. But history does not stay buried forever. The golden disk, with its impossible map of the heavens, stands as a quiet rebellion against the arrogance of certainty. It reminds us that knowledge is not a straight line of progress, but a circle, one that turns, fades, and returns again. Every vanished culture leaves behind traces not of their wealth, but of their understanding, the ideas they encoded in metal and stone, hoping that one day someone would remember. And perhaps that's what we're doing now, listening to the whisper of the forgotten, trying to decode the message our ancestors left behind before the mists of prehistory swallowed their voices whole. In the sun-scorched hills of southeastern Turkey, a place called Göbekli Tepe rises from the earth like an accusation. Its colossal pillars, carved, arranged, and aligned with astonishing precision, were erected nearly 11,000 years ago, long before writing, metal, or even the plow. By all accounts, it shouldn't exist. Nomadic hunter-gatherers, we're told, lacked the organization, the tools, the mathematics to build something like this. And yet there it stands, a vast temple complex born in an age that shouldn't have known temples at all. Archaeologists who first uncovered it were stunned. The site rewrote timelines, shattered categories, and defied every evolutionary chart of human progress. Those 16-ton pillars were not just dragged and lifted, they were planned, oriented toward celestial markers, arranged in circles that seemed to map the sky itself. The builders of Göbekli Tepe possessed a mastery of engineering and astronomy that modern science cannot comfortably explain. The question is no longer how they built it, but how they knew what to build. And Göbekli Tepe is not alone. Across the Nubian desert, the stones of Nabta Playa form another riddle in the sand. 1,000 years before the first Egyptian pharaoh, nomadic tribes gathered there to raise a stone circle, aligned perfectly with the rising of the summer solstice sun. It was not a random arrangement. It was a calendar, an astronomical observatory constructed by people who had not yet built cities. Beneath the desert Yesi silence lies evidence of a sky-watching tradition so advanced it predicted the rhythms of the cosmos long before Egypt, as pyramids, reached for the stars. Then there's the Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a shipwreck off a Greek island in 1901, ignored for decades because it was too advanced to fit anywhere in history. When X-ray scans finally revealed its inner workings, scholars realized they were holding an ancient analog computer, complete with gears that tracked planetary movements, eclipses, and the phases of the moon. It was as precise as a modern clock, built 2,000 years before such mechanisms should have existed. For generations, historians dismissed it as a curiosity. Only recently did they recognize it for what it was, a fragment of genius from a civilization that understood the heavens with mechanical grace. Each of these wonders shares a silent defiance. They do not simply testify to human ingenuity. They challenge the very timeline of human awakening. The true puzzle, perhaps, isn't technological but psychological. We prefer our history neat, linear, comforting. We like to believe we're the pinnacle of progress. Yet every stone, every gear, every impossible structure whispers the same unsettling truth. Progress may not be a straight line at all, but a forgotten circle. One that turns, collapses, and begins again. Perhaps our ancestors weren't primitive dreamers stumbling toward reason. Perhaps they were custodians of a knowledge we've since misplaced, builders of a wisdom that modern minds can only glimpse through the dust of ages. Their monuments remain, staring skyward, waiting for us to remember what they once knew. In the dusty plains of the Indus Valley, beneath layers of time and silence, lies a civilization that seems to whisper from another kind of world. A world that thrived without kings, without wars, without monuments to ego. Around 2600 BCE, the Harappans built cities that would put Victorian London to shame. Streets ran straight and wide, lined with homes equipped with indoor plumbing and covered drainage systems. Standardized brick sizes were used across hundreds of miles, evidence of a civilization that valued precision and order over spectacle and conquest. At its height, the Indus world held nearly 5 million people, stretching across an area larger than Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Yet nowhere do we find the emblems of empire. No grand palaces, no towering ziggurats, no thrones of gold. Instead we find balance, function, harmony. It is as though their power lay not in domination but in design. They governed without leaving behind laws or king's decrees, and their script, etched on small seals and tablets, remains undeciphered, silent but insistent. What kind of intelligence organizes a civilization so vast and stable, yet so humble in its self-expression? In Mohenjo-Daro, the Mound of the Dead, archaeologists found something even stranger. Equality. The city's homes differ little in size or structure. The same drainage systems serve both the modest dwellings and the grand ones. The Great Bath, perhaps a communal ritual space, suggests that purification, not hierarchy, was at the heart of their urban philosophy. Without generals or monarchs, the Harappans built a civilization of cooperation, guided by an order we still cannot decode. Thousands of miles away and centuries later, another voice rises from the Aegean, a civilization just as refined and just as enigmatic. On the island of Crete, the Minoans built palace complexes that shimmered with light and color. Their architecture breathed. Sunlight poured through open courtyards, air circulated through vertical shafts, water flowed through pipes and drains. 3,000 years before the Renaissance. They had already mastered multi-story buildings and sophisticated plumbing systems that would vanish from Europe for millennia. Their language, Linear A, remains as silent as the Harappan script, another sealed library of lost thought. But their frescoes tell a story of motion and grace. Women in positions of prominence, rituals centered not on blood or conquest, but on transformation. In the great bull-leaping ceremonies, participants vaulted over charging beasts, a dangerous dance between chaos and control, courage and surrender. It feels less like sport and more like metaphor, a vivid expression of humanity's eternal attempt to transcend fear through rhythm and ritual. The Harappans and the Minoans, two civilizations separated by continents and centuries, share a quiet defiance. They speak not through words, but through the elegance of what they built. Their cities are philosophies rendered in brick and stone, blueprints of societies that found power not in hierarchy, but in harmony. They remind us that civilization need not shout to be great, that sometimes the truest wisdom speaks in silence. In 1513, a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis unfurled a map that should not have existed. Drawn on gazelle skin, colored with age and salt, it portrayed a world both familiar and impossible. There was South America, its contours precise, its proportions nearly perfect, and far to the south, another landmass, Antarctica. But not the Antarctica buried under miles of ice we know today. The coastline on Reis's map showed mountain ranges, river deltas, and rocky inlets, features that wouldn't be rediscovered until seismic mapping in 1949, more than 4 centuries later. When confronted with the enigma, scholars scrambled for explanations. Some called it coincidence, others forgery. Yet Reis himself had left a clue in his notes. He had compiled the chart from ancient sources, maps copied and recopied from civilizations long vanished. Some, he claimed, from the time of Alexander the Great. The implication was staggering. If true, it meant that ancient peoples had mapped the Antarctic continent before the ice claimed it, or possessed instruments capable of seeing through the frozen veil. Either possibility defied everything we think we know about human history, and Reis was not alone. In 1531, another cartographer, Oronteus Phineus, drew a map centered on the South Pole that depicted Antarctica with uncanny accuracy. His rendering included interior rivers and mountain ranges, positioned exactly where modern explorers would later confirm them. This was centuries before any ship set eyes on that frozen continent. The Phineus map, like the one before it, shouldn't exist, and yet there it is, ink on parchment, mocking the idea that exploration is a modern invention. Mainstream historians have long struggled with these artifacts. Some argue they are misinterpretations of South American coastlines. Others suggest that chance produced the illusion of accuracy. But the precision is too deliberate, the geometry too confident. Taken together, these maps whisper of an older cartographic tradition, one belonging to a civilization with global reach, a mastery of navigation, and an understanding of geography we have only recently begun to match. Half a world away, another mystery stretches across the deserts of Peru. The Nazca lines, hundreds of enormous geoglyphs etched into the arid plateau, depict hummingbirds, monkeys, and geometric shapes so vast they can only be fully seen from the air. To create figures spanning hundreds of meters with perfect proportion and alignment requires not only mathematical precision, but perspective, an aerial vantage no known pre-Columbian culture possessed. Were these ritual pathways for gods to descend? astronomical alignments for celestial calendars or maps, vast sacred cartographies drawn for eyes that could soar. The truth may lie not in what these civilizations mapped, but in how they conceived of mapping itself. To them, geography was not just physical space. It was sacred knowledge, a reflection of cosmic order. They didn't merely chart the world. They encoded relationships between heaven and earth, between the seen and the unseen. Perhaps the real treasure isn't the maps themselves, but the haunting suggestion behind them, that the ancients knew our planet, and perhaps the sky above it, in ways we have only begun to rediscover. In the jungles of Central America, beneath layers of earth and myth, the Maya carved mathematics into the fabric of the cosmos. Long before calculus or mechanical clocks, they conceived of zero, a symbol of nothingness that would become the cornerstone of everything. Only two other civilizations in history, those of India and Mesopotamia, had glimpsed that same truth. For the Maya, zero was not merely a placeholder. It was a portal. It represented absence as potential, the stillness between creation and destruction. In that single concept, they captured infinity. Their long count calendar, beginning from a mythical creation date in 3114 BCE, stretched backward and forward across millions of years. It was a system so precise that modern astronomers still marvel at its accuracy. Their astronomical tables predicted eclipses, solstices, and the cycles of Venus with calculations that required centuries of continuous observation. To them, numbers were sacred, each digit a glyph infused with divine resonance. Time was not linear. It was a wheel, endlessly turning, echoing the birth and death of stars. This was mathematics transformed into theology. The Maya understood that numbers could describe not just the heavens, but the heartbeat of existence itself. Their vigesimal, or base 20 system, allowed for complexity beyond the reach of Roman numerals. With it, they measured the dance of planets, encoded myth into cycles, and gave structure to eternity. Across the world, in the cradle of Mesopotamia, another mathematical vision took shape. The Babylonians built their universe on base 60, a system so elegant that its fingerprints remain in every clock and compass today, 60 minutes to the hour, 360 degrees to the circle. Their mathematics wasn't arbitrary, it was cosmological. They sought patterns that bound heaven and earth, and in doing so, they created the geometry of time itself. In Egypt, the same impulse took architectural form. The Great Pyramid of Giza, constructed with breathtaking precision, embodies ratios that approximate both pi and the golden mean. Whether by design or divine intuition, its proportions echo constants, fundamental to the natural world. From the spirals of shells to the orbits of planets, the pyramid becomes more than a tomb. It is an equation rendered in stone, a physical hymn to universal order. Even the enigmatic Antikythera mechanism, its gears whispering through 2,000 years of silence, may be a mechanical descendant of these same traditions. Babylonian star charts, Egyptian geometry, and Greek genius woven into a single device that mapped the heavens as faithfully as any telescope. And in Cambodia and Mexico, at Angkor Wat and Chichen Itza, architecture once again becomes algebra. Temples and pyramids align perfectly with solstices, equinoxes, and stellar events, turning stone into calendar, structure into scripture. Each monument is a mirror of the cosmos, built to remind those below that the divine can be measured, not in faith alone, but in numbers. These civilizations didn't separate science from spirituality. They found God in geometry, eternity in arithmetic. Their greatest treasure wasn't gold, but the equations that reveal the invisible order of the universe. In the quiet storerooms of museums, behind the labels and display lights, lie objects that refuse to fit inside the neat chronology of human progress. Among them is a small clay jar from ancient Mesopotamia, ordinary in shape, unremarkable in decoration, yet extraordinary in implication. Known as the Baghdad Battery, it is a vessel from 2 millennia ago, containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod. When filled with an acidic liquid, it produces a measurable electrical current. For decades, historians have tried to explain it away as coincidence or curiosity, but its design is too precise, its function too intentional, whether used for electroplating jewelry, healing rituals, or religious ceremonies that made metal gleam with divine light. One truth remains. Someone, long before Franklin's kite or Faraday's coil, understood electricity well enough to make it dance in their hands. The same enigma of lost knowledge gleams in the ghost of another forgotten science. Damascus steel. Medieval Islamic smiths forged blades so sharp they could split a hair in midair, yet flexible enough to bend without breaking. For centuries, these swords were legends in metal, alive, almost breathing. Modern metallurgists studying surviving specimens discovered something astonishing. Microscopic carbon nanotubes and cementite nanowires woven through the steel S structure. Nanotechnology, achieved 700 years before the term existed. The secret, lost. The precise method of folding, heating, and cooling died with its masters, taking with it an understanding of atomic architecture that modern science has only recently begun to rediscover. Then there was Greek fire, the Byzantine Empire's nightmare weapon, a liquid inferno that clung to ships, burned even on water, and could not be extinguished by any known means. Its formula was so closely guarded that it perished with its creators. Historians and chemists have guessed at its composition: petroleum, quicklime, sulfur. But none can replicate its terrible brilliance. It remains both miracle and mystery, a ghost of chemistry that refuses to be reborn. Yet not all of these alchemical treasures were weapons or tools. Some were art that transcended understanding. The Lycurgus cup, a Roman glass chalice from the 4th century, appears green in daylight, but glows deep red when lit from within. For centuries, it baffled observers. Only with the advent of electron microscopy did scientists uncover its secret. Nanoparticles of gold and silver, suspended in the glass matrix, diffracting light on a molecular scale. Ancient artisans had, unknowingly or not, mastered nanofabrication techniques that modern laboratories would only rediscover in the late 20th century. These are not the relics of superstition, but of experimentation, cultures that blended craft, faith, and empirical curiosity in ways our compartmentalized minds can scarcely grasp. They remind us that science and art were once siblings, born from the same urge to transmute the ordinary into the extraordinary, to turn matter into meaning. The alchemists of stone and metal were not primitive. They were pioneers of the unseen. On remote Easter Island, the Rongorongo tablets lie quietly in museum collections and private archives, their wooden surfaces etched with thousands of glyphs that curve and flow across the grain. Unlike ordinary writing, the lines alternate direction, moving Boustrophodon style, right to left, then left to right, creating a rhythm that mimics the motion of the plow across a field, or perhaps the movement of thought itself. Scholars count anywhere from 120 to 600 unique characters, a vocabulary vast enough to suggest a fully independent invention of writing. Yet when European missionaries arrived in 1864, no living Rapa Nui could read them. Centuries of disease, slavery, and devastation had snuffed out the custodians of knowledge, leaving these texts as silent witnesses to an intelligence that once thrived and then vanished. Thousands of miles away, in the sprawling cities of the Indus Valley, another script guards its secrets. Thousands of seals and tablets bear sequences of 4 or 5 symbols, concise yet deliberate. Some scholars argue these marks may not even constitute writing, mere shorthand or administrative symbols. Others see in them a complex system of communication that modern linguistics has yet to decipher. With no Rosetta Stone, no bilingual key, the Indus script remains a lock without a key, a civilization's mind imprisoned in tiny, undecipherable glyphs. The pattern repeats across continents and centuries. Linear A, the Minoans' enigmatic script, Proto-Elamite from ancient Iran, Olmec symbols scattered across Mesoamerica. Each represents the voice of a culture paused mid-thought, their libraries of law, science, and philosophy hidden from our understanding. We are surrounded not by absence, but by inaccessible abundance. Every undeciphered text is a treasure chest, whose contents we can glimpse but never fully hold. Perhaps the most confounding is the Voynich manuscript, a medieval codex that challenges our definitions of language, art, and knowledge itself. Its pages teem with botanical drawings that may be plants unknown to science, astronomical diagrams that defy conventional celestial mapping, and scripts that have resisted every cryptographic and linguistic technique modern scholarship can deploy. Some propose it is an elaborate hoax, others a treatise from an unknown cultural lineage, a text designed to preserve pharmacological and astronomical knowledge for initiates we may never meet. Its very existence forces the mind to confront a staggering possibility. The world is awash in knowledge we cannot access, treasures we can touch but never open. These unreadable scripts confront us with a profound tension. They are evidence of civilizations that thought deeply, encoded meticulously, and then vanished, leaving behind messages that demand patience, insight, and humility. Their value is not in gold or stone, but in the intellectual and cultural wealth they represent, a reminder that our ancestors were capable of preserving complexity beyond our imagining. Every tablet, seal, or manuscript is a whisper across millennia, a puzzle we can observe but cannot solve. The greatest treasures of human history are not lost. They are locked, waiting for a key that might never come, inviting us to reckon with the knowledge that civilizations rise, speak, and sometimes disappear without a trace. In the villages of Mali, the Dogon people have long gazed at the night sky with a precision that confounds modern astronomy. They speak not only of Sirius, the brightest star in our heavens, but of Sirius B, a faint white dwarf invisible to the naked eye. Western astronomers would only confirm its existence in 1862, using telescopes their ancestors could scarcely have imagined. Yet the Dogon claim this knowledge was passed down through generations, encoded in ritual, myth, and ceremony, a celestial inheritance older than any telescope, preserved with care across centuries. Half a world away, in the sunburnt expanses of Australia, Aboriginal oral traditions record coastlines submerged for 10,000 years, when sea levels were 120 meters lower. These stories, handed down for over 400 generations, accurately describe geographic features that modern marine archaeology has only recently confirmed. Every tale, every songline, carries empirical observations embedded in narrative, a living archive of survival and observation, proving that knowledge need not be written to endure. Across the vast Pacific, Polynesian wayfinders charted courses over millions of square miles of ocean, guided by the movements of stars, the calls of seabirds, the patterns of waves, and the subtle cues of wind and current. These navigators held mental maps of extraordinary sophistication, passed from teacher to apprentice through immersive experience rather than textbooks. Navigation was not a skill. It was a holistic practice, entwining ecology, physics, psychology, and cultural memory into a single, flowing system of understanding. What unites these cultures is not merely the facts they preserved, but the epistemologies they employed. Knowledge was embodied, contextual, relational. Stars were guides, songs were maps, rituals were laboratories. The world was understood not as discrete fragments, but as a web, every element interconnected, every observation validated through experience, ceremony, and social transmission. Such frameworks permitted a depth and resilience of understanding that our modern documentary-dependent civilizations often fail to recognize as knowledge at all. The treasures of these traditions lie not in instruments or texts, but in methods, ways of seeing, remembering, and reasoning that expand what it means to know. They reveal that human intelligence is not confined to writing or measurement, that science, memory, and spirituality can coexist in elegant synthesis. In their cosmologies, the sky, the land, and the mind were not separate realms but parts of an integrated whole. As we study these traditions, we are reminded that knowledge is not universal, but culturally framed. And in these epistemological legacies, the mysterious cultures of our past offer a profound lesson. Understanding is as much about how we perceive as it is about what we perceive. And some of the most valuable treasures of humanity are invisible, yet enduring beyond millennia. Across time and space, the labyrinth emerges as a quiet symbol of wisdom, appearing in Minoan Crete, among the Hopi of Arizona, and within the intricate courtyards of Hindu temples. Unlike the traps of myth, these labyrinths were not designed to ensnare, but to teach. To walk them was to engage in a meditation of movement, a physical philosophy in which the journey itself transformed the traveler. Step by step, turn by turn, the path demanded attention, patience, and reflection, qualities necessary to receive the treasures these cultures sought to impart. Mysterious civilizations understood that true treasure could not simply be claimed or hoarded. It required growth, insight, and transformation. Their greatest gifts were never objects alone, but lessons embedded in process, structure, and design. Modern archaeology has gradually adopted this perspective, shifting from the pursuit of gold or ornament to the careful study of context. A pot's worth is no longer measured in metal, but in the story it tells, how it was made, where it rested, what hands shaped it, and what minds envisioned its form. In learning to interpret these clues, we touch the intellect of those who came before us. Their treasures extend far beyond artifacts. The Amazon rainforest holds evidence of terra preta, human-engineered fertile soil that sustained agriculture for centuries. The Inca built terrace systems across mountainsides, feeding millions while preserving fragile ecosystems. Persia's qanats and India's stepwells reflect sophisticated water management, solving environmental challenges with elegance and foresight. Even social innovation, the democratic principles of the Iroquois Confederacy, shaped modern governance, including the U.S. Constitution. Civilization, it seems, manifests not only in monuments, but in ideas, systems, and methodologies that endure in forms both visible and invisible. The legacy of these labyrinthine cultures is not simply found in museums or textbooks, but in their methods, the ways they approached complexity, structured knowledge, and embedded understanding into the world around them. They remind us that ingenuity is not universal in form, but limitless in variation. A civilization may be mysterious, not because it is unknowable, but because it operates from assumptions, priorities, and paradigms alien to our own. To recognize this is to encounter the greatest treasure of all: humility. Humility to accept that our frameworks, while powerful, are incomplete. Curiosity to explore the myriad ways human intelligence has flourished. And reverence for the enduring ingenuity of those who walked before us, leaving guidance in stone story and sky for those willing to listen. The labyrinth in every culture teaches that the journey toward understanding is itself the prize. We return now to the golden disk from the Caucasus, that its impossible star maps etched in metal, but we see it differently, not merely as an artifact, but as an invitation. The true treasures of humanity's most enigmatic cultures are not hidden in museum vaults or buried beneath jungles. They are encoded in the questions they force us to ask about ourselves. How did they achieve such sophistication with so little? What values guided them that we have long forgotten? What technologies, philosophies, and ways of being did we abandon as we marched toward modernity? Every undeciphered script holds up a mirror to our assumptions about knowledge. Every engineering marvel challenges the linear narrative of progress we tell ourselves. Every astronomical system from a culture deemed primitive destabilizes the comfortable chronology that places modern science at the pinnacle of understanding. The real treasure lies in recognizing that human potential has expressed itself in infinite, diverse forms. Our technological civilization is merely one trajectory among countless possibilities, and the mystery of these cultures persists largely because we lack the conceptual frameworks to comprehend them on their own terms. We must approach them not as puzzles to conquer, but as teachers to learn from. Not as primitive ancestors, but as alternative iterations of human possibility. The Harappans show us that cities can thrive without kings, centralized power, or war. The Maya reveal a vision of time as cyclical, infinite, and sacred. Polynesian wayfinders teach us that knowledge lives in bodies, in practices, in memory, passed through apprenticeship, not confined to text or algorithm. The treasure is not the objects they left behind. It is the way they thought, the systems they built, the ways they organized life, and the ways they understood their place in the cosmos. And yet, a deeper mystery endures. Why did these cultures decline or vanish? Environmental catastrophe, conquest, disease, or conscious choice. Each collapse carries lessons for a civilization now teetering on technological and ecological precipices. The study of mysterious cultures is not simply archaeology. It is prophecy in reverse. By reading the past, we glimpse possible futures, and by contemplating their achievements, we expand our sense of what is possible today. If this exploration has stirred your curiosity, if it has unsettled the comfortable assumptions of progress and civilization, then you have already found the treasure. Not gold, but its opposite, the priceless gift of perspective. Subscribe to continue this journey through humanity's hidden histories, where every solved mystery uncovers 10 more, and where the greatest discovery is always the next question. Share in the comments which mysterious culture fascinates you most, and together we can map the labyrinth of human ingenuity, one winding path at a time.